Have you ever walked into an almost empty movie theater, picked a seat, then watched someone ignore every other option and sit right beside you? Nothing illegal happened. Nothing dangerous happened. Yet your brain immediately decided something was wrong. Not because they were too close, but because they broke something your brain already expected. You never notice these rules until someone breaks one, and they are everywhere. Elevators, waiting rooms, crosswalks, conversations, even the way strangers walk past each other on a sidewalk. Billions of strangers follow the exact same invisible rules every day, and almost none of them are written down anywhere. Somehow everyone is reading from the same invisible script. So here's the question. How can billions of strangers obey the same rules if nobody ever taught them? The strange answer is that most of these rules were never explained to anyone. They were copied. Think about a child entering an elevator for the first time. Nobody tells them where to stand. Nobody explains which direction to face.
So they watch the adults spread out.
They face the doors. They avoid unnecessary eye contact. A few rides later, the child does exactly the same thing. Nobody taught you elevator etiquette. You copied it. And that's how almost every unwritten rule survives. Not because someone explains it, because someone demonstrates it. Long before you understood the world through words, your brain was quietly learning what normal looks like. But copying only explains how the rules spread. It doesn't explain why we keep them. For that, look at what actually happens inside the elevator. Nobody announces their intentions. Nobody says, "I'm gonna stand over here." Everyone simply becomes predictable. Facing the doors says, "I'm waiting to leave." Standing still says, "I'm not about to do something unexpected." An elevator isn't awkward because strangers are standing close together. It's awkward because everyone is working to become predictable at the same time. Every person is quietly telling everyone else, "You don't have to worry about me." Your brain loves predictable people. The less it has to predict, the less energy it spends. Which is why waiting rooms are so interesting. Imagine sitting in one with nothing to do. No magazine, no conversation, just silence. Within seconds, most people reach for their phones. Not because they're bored, because a phone quietly explains your presence. "I'm busy, I don't need anything. You don't have to think about me." Your phone isn't solving boredom, it's solving uncertainty. But sometimes you can't hide behind a screen, because sometimes your decision becomes public. Watch a crosswalk. The light is red, the road is completely empty and nobody crosses. Then one person steps forward and almost everyone follows. Nothing about the road changed, only the people did. You think you're deciding whether it's safe to cross? Your brain is deciding whether it's safe to disagree. You're not just watching the street. You're watching people who are watching the street. And sometimes nobody actually knows the answer. The crowd doesn't have to know it. It only has to look like it does. Which leads to something even stranger. Most people don't fear being wrong. They fear being wrong alone. You can see it at the end of a concert. The music stops, and for 1 second nobody claps. Everyone already knows they enjoyed it. They're waiting for something else. Permission. One person starts clapping and then the entire room joins in. Applause isn't the sound of approval, it's the sound of uncertainty disappearing. The exact same thing happens when someone drops a glass in a restaurant. Every head turns, and then almost every head turns away. Not because people stopped noticing. Looking away isn't pretending nothing happened. It's silently giving someone permission to recover. So these hidden rules don't just control what you do, they quietly decide what deserves your attention and what should disappear. Which is also why tiny social mistakes feel surprisingly big. Someone waves, you wave back, then you realize they were greeting the person behind you. Nothing serious happened, and yet your whole body reacts. The mistake wasn't the problem. Your brain expected one thing and reality did something else. Your nervous system reacts long before your rational brain remembers how harmless it was. The same thing explains why people apologize when they aren't at fault. Someone bumps into you and you say sorry. You're not admitting guilt. Sorry often isn't about the past at all. It's about protecting the next 5 seconds. Because most conversations aren't really exchanging information. They're reducing uncertainty. Even "how are you" usually isn't really a question. Some questions don't exchange information. They synchronize two strangers. They quietly confirm that you're both following the same social script. The same invisible coordination shows up on sidewalks. Two strangers walk toward each other. Both step left, both step right. Neither person is reacting randomly. Two brains are running simulations of each other and each one is trying to predict the other's prediction. And suddenly the movie theater makes much more sense. At first it felt like a story about personal space. It wasn't. The seat wasn't threatening. The uncertainty was. With every empty seat around you, your brain became more certain about what would happen next. Then one person quietly broke it. Your brain wasn't reacting to the stranger. It was reacting to an expectation that suddenly disappeared. And for a few seconds, the entire room felt different. Now imagine an entire cafe without any of these invisible rules. No line, no greetings. People randomly joining strangers' tables. Nobody knows whose turn it is. Nothing illegal, nothing dangerous, just exhausting. Because every tiny interaction suddenly becomes a decision. That's what these unwritten rules really do. They reduce uncertainty. They let millions of strangers cooperate without discussing every tiny decision. They're the hidden operating system of society. Billions of people running the same invisible software without ever installing it. But every operating system has a weakness. Sometimes people follow a rule simply because everyone else does. A rule can feel obvious long after everyone forgot why it existed. A habit can feel natural long after it stops being useful. Which raises one final question. If nobody officially writes these rules, how do they ever change? Exactly the same way they began. Someone moves first and everyone else simply calls it normal. A new greeting, a different habit, a better idea. Enough people copy it and eventually the new behavior becomes the rule. Which means you've been playing a much bigger role than you thought. You aren't only following these invisible rules. Every time you choose a seat, wait your turn, step aside, or reach for your phone, someone else is watching. Exactly the way you once watched everyone before you. Tomorrow you'll follow hundreds of unwritten rules without noticing a single one. You'll know where to stand, when to speak, when to look away. Not because anyone taught you. You never signed the agreement. Nobody even told you it existed. But every single day someone is learning the rules by watching you. So tell me in the comments, what's an unwritten rule where you live that visitors always break?